I'm really interested and like curious about ice cream. So if I go somewhere and I see something interesting, I want to check it out and try it. As like just a day-to-day consumer, I'm not eating ice cream every day. People think that that's what I should be doing.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Nicholas Morgenstern is the owner and operator of Morgenstern's Finest Ice Cream, a beloved small batch ice cream parlor in New York City with nationwide delivery. After a decade of operations in the city, he stopped by the show to talk about how the cult-followed ice cream gets made and how he thinks ice cream tastes have shifted over the past few years. Nicholas Morgenstern, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I have to tell you, when I first moved to New York, I lived walking distance from the Morgensterns on Rivington, and it was part of my neighborhood weekend loop that I would do. So I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Great to be here. And I hear that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
People tell me that about that store a lot.
I mean, it's kind of like in such a good nexus point of the Lower East Side, like meeting Bowery almost. What would you call that neighborhood? Lower East Side?
I kind of think it's more like Nolita, NoHo. It's not even either of those, but it feels closer to those. It's funny you say that. When I signed the lease for that store, I had been looking for a store for over a year and just trying to push as far west as I could that I could afford. And that location popped up, and it was formerly a restaurant supply store. And the landlord had like recently split it into 3 stores. And I had bought equipment in that restaurant supply store, you know, working in the industry before. And it was a strange experience because I had looked at all these stores and I had really been rebuffed by most landlords that I spoke with. And I sat on the bench in front of Lecan Designs, which is a store that sells kind of like antiques from Asia and Southeast Asia. And I sat on their bench and I was with someone who I worked with, and I just was like, this is it. And I hadn't even talked to anyone. I like called the number on the door, and I just had this like pretty strong feeling. And I had a strong feeling about that street. Rivington is a special street. I now know it's a thoroughfare. It has a ton of bicycle traffic and foot traffic that's basically moving between those 2 neighborhoods. So while it looks kind of like a sleepy side street, it's really busy. And I think the landscape of streets in New York is like so specific street to street. So if you go 1 block north to Stanton in the same location, it's like you're not going to do any business over there. And if you went 1 block south, you'd be on Delancey, which I've watched like so many places open and close. And so that location has just been really special for us and has worked. And I'm really lucky that I have a great landlord there as well, who's worked with me through the pandemic when it was really rough.
Yeah, I love hearing about the geography of places in New York. I lived between Rivington and Delancey, so I think those streets to me are so different in terms of the experience of walking down them. Like you would never really want to stroll down Delancey. But Rivington, you definitely do want to stroll down like with an ice cream in hand, and it makes so much sense. And when you're talking about signing the lease, how many years ago was that?
I signed the lease in 2013.
Right. So this is like 10-year, 11-year.
We're in our 10-year right now.
Yeah.
Because I leased the store in the summer of 13 and I opened it in the spring of 14. So this is our 10-year this year.
I love getting to talk to you on the decade anniversary, and I have a lot of questions just about how you've seen things shifting and evolving and staying the same over the years. But to start, I'm wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about your career, your past as a pastry chef before you were this kind of ice cream tycoon here in New York. What inspired you to want to get into ice cream in that way in the first place?
Okay. I don't think of myself as a tycoon. I'm like a
tycoon in like heavy air quotes. You know?
Yeah, I am like an ice cream operator because I make ice cream, but I'm also like operating these stores. Mm-hmm. I worked as a cook, as a pastry cook for a long time, mostly in fine dining restaurants in California, where I'm from, and Hawaii. I worked in Europe, and then I moved to New York in 2001, and I cooked in a number of big fine dining restaurants here. And then I got out of the I guess like the fine dining world, and I opened a small neighborhood restaurant in Fort Greene in 2008. and then I put an ice cream cart in front of the restaurant, which was always, for a very long time, I had thought that I should do that at other restaurants where I was working as the pastry chef. And I was told to go away or not mention that, or they just weren't interested in it. And for whatever reason, they just didn't see that that was a good idea. And so I finally did it at my restaurant in Fort Greene in 2009. And then the ice cream cart was very successful. The restaurant was successful. The ice cream cart was very successful. And that opened my eyes to possibly being able to make a business out of selling ice cream exclusively. And then I opened another restaurant in the East Village after that. And then and I was trying to get a lease for an ice cream store. But, back then, sort of pre-social media, and I feel like a lot of things have changed in New York since then. The iPhone changed New York a lot, in my opinion. It was just like looking at Craigslist and like trying to like basically go on foot and look for spaces. So I spent a long time looking for an ice cream store and couldn't find something or couldn't get a landlord to let me do it. So I spent a number of years trying to get to the point that I could have an ice cream shop. And then, as I mentioned earlier, finally in 2013, found a landlord that was willing to give me a chance. Usually I wasn't being taken seriously. They were like, I guess this guy wants to make ice cream. So that I just was like really focused and driven to do that. So when we opened Rivington 10 years ago, it was a terrific feeling to have it be successful. It was successful from the very first time that I unlocked the door to the public. There was a line around the block from the very beginning. So
I love hearing about the ice cream cart origin because I feel like fast forward 10 years later, that's such a huge business for a lot of restaurants in the city, and certainly in Fort Greene, which is the neighborhood that I live in. I feel like every time I walk around, there's like a new ice cream cart out in front. Do you feel like that also is kind of a more recent trend that's kind of picked up speed?
It didn't exist before I did it. And then a lot of places followed suit and did it quickly behind me. I think they saw that there was a lot of attention. We got write-ups for it and so on. And if you have the location and you can figure out how to make it work, it can be an amenity. I've seen places do it and not work as well. So it can go both ways. But yeah, I started with an ice cream cart. I still use ice cream carts. It's a huge part of our business for our events business. And last year we did a partnership with Ernesto's and we put an ice cream cart in front of their store, which was very nostalgic and reminiscent for me. That was a full-on partnership. Yes, it was a collaboration between the chef Ryan and I to make the flavors and everything, but it was a partnership as far as like how we worked together to develop the concept and to deal with all of the operational details. And I was like right back to my playbook that was like 10 years old at that point and going like, no, this is the way that you operate this thing, rolling the cart in and out of the store and plugging it in and how much staff and all that kind of stuff, because I had done that before.
Yeah, all of those logistics. And you say that you opened the store and from the jump you had a line around the block. How did you get that kind of support shored up from the beginning?
Rob and Robin from New York Magazine. They were always supportive in my career and supportive of so many young chefs who really got their start in New York of just like being scrappy and like aggressive with their perspective on food. And Rob and Robin at the time, they were really on the pulse of that. And they would, I think when they saw something that they thought was good or was going to be good, they would really push it in the magazine, in New York Magazine. And so before we opened the store, there was a 2-page spread of our King Kong banana split. And they highlighted the fact that we had 5 vanillas on the menu, which we still do have a number of vanillas and chocolates and so on. That's like the way that we do the menu. And so they highlighted that, and it was this 2-page spread picture of this banana split. And I think that, I mean, I didn't ask the people in line, but I can only assume, as I said, it was really the early days of social media driving business through the doors of brick and mortar. So it wasn't like a quote unquote viral situation. And yeah, there was a line out the door from the moment. I was putting in all of the coat hooks under the counters at 4:45 and we were opening at 5. And when I stood up, I looked outside and there was all these people standing out there. And I had been building the store for 6 or 7 months. So I'd spent a lot of time in there and there was never like a crowd of people standing on Rivington. And I turned to my manager who had spent a lot of time working with me in restaurants, and I was like, what are all these people doing out there? And she very nervously was counting the till, and she was like, I think they're here for us. And then we opened the door, and it was like, yeah, crazy from there.
I love hearing that. And I imagine someone listening might be wondering how you can have 5 different vanillas on a menu. Is that about the vanilla itself that you're sourcing, or how did you kind of differentiate, and what made you want to do 5 vanillas in the first place?
So we only use vanilla from Madagascar. In my opinion, that's the vanilla that I prefer for the style of ice cream that we make. And the different types of vanilla on our menu will range. Right now, we're serving vanilla with bourbon, with Old Grandad bourbon. We're serving vanilla with burnt honey. We serve vanilla with just plain Madagascar vanilla, like kind of classic or standard. We have a toasted rice and matcha vanilla on the menu right now. And then we have a vanilla flavor that's made with almond roca, the candies. Mm-hmm. And so we move things around. I think vanilla is like the most important palate in ice cream. It's like kind of like the standard. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can express something with it. So that's why we did that. The reason I did it is because I went to another ice cream shop in New York right before I opened it, maybe like a year, maybe less than a year before I opened it. And they had all kinds of like pretty provocative flavors on the menu. And at the top of the menu, it said, no, we don't have vanilla. And I remember like seeing that, and I was like, that's really a stupid thing to do. That's what I thought to myself as a business. I was like, vanilla is like so critical and so important to people's experience of eating ice cream. Like as a chef, if you're like bored by it or you don't like it or you know, whatever, that's like your personal feeling about it. But to the customer and their experience, that's critical. And my order, if I go to a store, is vanilla on a cake cone. There's nothing that gives me the same like nostalgic feeling as having that. So if I went to a place, which I did, and they didn't have it, not only was I like disappointed that they didn't have the thing that I would want, but I was also like a little bit insulted as a customer, I felt like. So
yeah, it's funny because obviously to say something is vanilla is kind of colloquially a dig that it's boring or not quite good enough. But I do think you're right that even on a nostalgia perspective, which a lot of ice cream is driven by thoughts of nostalgia, it's kind of the core color in your palette to have. And hearing about this, I want to know about how you cycle in and out flavors. I feel like that must be a huge part about running production for an ice cream shop. How do you decide when you're going to move something out or bring something back in? Do you have like a big database somewhere of every flavor you've ever done?
Yeah, I keep track of the flavors for sure. And then we change the menu once a year now. And I think it started in 2020 or 2021 maybe. So when we moved from Rivington to our big location on LaGuardia and Houston, the menu was 88 flavors there. And that menu was meant to not change very much. It was so many flavors. I felt like we had really covered all the bases. During and after the pandemic, we reduced it down to 55 and then started to look at changing the menu more regularly. So changing the menu in an ice cream store has its own challenges. Customers become attached to your flavors. And for a store like ours where we are probably the only place that you can get a lot of the things that we serve, people become really attached to it, and they not only want to have that experience themselves, but they also want to bring other people to have that experience. So I've worked the register in my store a lot, and I've seen how deflating it can be for someone when they've brought someone, and probably like someone visiting from out of town, and they said, oh my God, we're going to go have this experience, and you got to come and they have salt and pepper pine nut, or they have durian banana, or any of and then they come and we don't have it. And it's like, they're really, really, crestfallen. So that I'm sensitive to that as the person writing the menu. On the other hand, over the years, I've seen how if we don't change the menu, then the new flavors don't come up for people to create a relationship with. So if the menu just stayed the same forever, then things become a little bit flat for the experience. And so it's really tough. A very popular flavor right now is made with salted egg yolk and pineapple. And for people who have spent time in Southeast Asia and Taiwan and Singapore, those flavors are like really connected. And for New York palate, probably unusual, even though you can find those things here. And when we first put that flavor on the menu, it was not popular. And within 1 or 2 months of it being on the menu, it was like rivaling the top selling flavors on the menu. So we had to move something out of the way to make room for that flavor. And if we hadn't, it wouldn't be there, and we wouldn't know, and nor would the guests. So long answer to your question is we change the menu once a year. The matrix of our menu is organized around the categories of flavor: vanilla, chocolate, caramel, coffee, and then some fruit flavors, peach and strawberry, raspberry, tropical flavors, and down the list. And we've changed those things. I've changed that stuff over the years as we move into different territories. We kind of like push into classic American flavors and make a category for that. Or we have a category for cookies, and then a miscellaneous category, which is as it should be, just like super random weird stuff like mayonnaise and pickles, or, Takis flavor this year or something like that. So
yeah, the Takis flavor I think is so fun. That's such a huge like middle school memory probably for me. It's like buying Takis out of a kid's backpack and eating it. I've never had it in ice cream form, but
it's really good.
It must be good. Why is it so good in ice cream form?
My opinion, the spice in ice cream is tricky, and there's a lot of acidity actually in Takis. There's a lot of different acids in there. It's really because of the corn. The corn flavor actually makes it really yummy.
Corn ice cream is one of my all-time favorite flavors of ice cream, and I feel like it's something that has become slowly easier to find here in the city. It must be interesting for you as an ice cream producer to see the way that like larger ice cream trends kind of take hold of people's imaginations.
Yeah, the palette is expanded a lot, and people are really interested in different things. My experience with that from the beginning has been that people want to try new stuff in New York City. I think you're here and you are exposed to so many things here in food and in all forms of like creative expression. So we put durian on the menu when we opened the store, and durian is it's a fruit from Southeast Asia. It's called the king of fruits. It's a giant fruit. It's the size of a football. It has all these spikes all over it. What it's known for is its aroma, its smell, and its flavor, which can be really off-putting to some people. And it has a lot of volatile compounds similar to like fermented like beer or cheese.
Papaya, I think, has a little bit of that kind of whiff as well.
Definitely. That like kind of ammoniated aroma can be in there. But man, people who love durian, they love durian. And we put it on the menu from the beginning, the first day that we were open, which was the Friday of Memorial Day in 2014. And I made all the ice cream and I was working all the services, and I had made a fair guesstimate of how much of each flavor I should make based on how popular I thought they would be. So I made a lot of salted caramel pretzel and bourbon vanilla and Vietnamese coffee, and I didn't make so much durian banana. And back then I was buying all the durians fresh, like on the street, because I didn't have a vendor for those. So on Sunday afternoon, we were super busy all weekend, and the team came up to me on Sunday afternoon and said, "We're out of durian banana." I said, "No way, it's not possible." I made 3 gallons of that. We couldn't have gone through that much. And then ran around the store looking through the freezers, and sure enough, we didn't have any. And on Monday morning, which was Memorial Day, we couldn't get any more durian. Those guys weren't out selling on the street that day. And I couldn't have made it anyway because it needs 24 hours. So I worked the register all day on Memorial Day that year, and was blown away by how many people came in expecting to have it and were very disappointed that we didn't have it. So word had traveled within 3 days that there was this place that had this thing. And so like not only interesting to see how quickly things traveled and people were like looking for that, but also that they wanted something that typically would have been Like most chefs would have said, don't put that on the menu. That's like a gross ingredient. So I learned an important lesson there. Polarizing ingredients are really, really important to our matrix.
Yeah, I love thinking about that. And also talking with you 10 years later, I think durian has become even more popular on a global scale. The New York Times, like just a couple of weeks ago, was writing about how the price of durian has gone up so dramatically because more and more people are craving it. Are there any other like ingredients or flavors you've done on the menu that you've seen a big kind of increase or shift in interest over the past decade?
I think all tropical fruits are going to continue to gain momentum. And we put a new flavor on the menu this year, which is mango and melon, it's a sorbet. It's delicious. I love it. I just would not have thought that it would have been as popular as it is. I get all the flavor matrix sales every week, and it's consistently beating out almost any sorbet we've ever made. So mango is becoming incredibly popular. Anytime that we put mango on the menu, very popular. The other side of the spectrum on that is that I think like maybe coming out of the pandemic and people looking for familiarity or like nostalgia, foods that are familiar, and I'm specifically driving at like cookies. That stuff has also been like really, really popular. Those things right now. I mean, we look at the data all the time and things move around, but things that were popular before, like salted caramel and like maybe things that were like kind of more chefy, those things were really popular, whereas it seems to be pivoting towards like ingredient oriented or this like nostalgia vibe. Like,
yeah. I think the common thread that I see between that is that ice cream is like the familiar vehicle for people, and then the expression of the flavor or of the ingredient is maybe like the unexpected twist. So whether it's an ingredient that people are less familiar with, or it is a dessert that people are familiar with but they haven't had it in ice cream form, there's that kind of combination of like nostalgia and then forward thinking at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And when I talk to people about putting together a menu, and whether it's a menu in a restaurant or in my case, it's in an ice cream shop, the customer can only order what's on the menu. They cannot order what's not on your menu. So sometimes I think looking at the sales matrix of like what's moving and what's not moving, it's all going to be relative to the available selection. So if you have cookies and cream on your menu, and you don't have mint cookies and cream on your menu next to it, you don't know whether mint cookies and cream would be as popular, more popular, less popular. And if you put the two things next to each other, that's going to create its own dynamic versus having one or the other. And so we're fortunate that we have the experience of seeing what it looks like as we move things basically in and out of the slots. So the slots sort of stay the same. So I have room for 5 vanillas, 5 chocolates, 3 coffees, 3 caramels, and so on. And certain things don't change for us because we would really upset people if we take some certain flavors off the menu. There's like 12 flavors that really hard for us to take off the menu, and that's been consistent like since the ice cream cart, like since back then. And so those things kind of anchor, they give us like the base, and then we move things in and out. And I'm never not surprised by what does really well and also what doesn't do really well.
I would love to get my hands on the data of like the flavors that are performing week over week. It's so interesting to think about it in that kind of way.
The other thing that's interesting about it is, so I get a report every week for the previous 7 days. And so it is interesting to look at it in like, so I'm seeing it on a 7-day report, but then looking at it rolling over a longer period, it always it's never the same. So what was popular for 1 week will not track what was popular for that same month necessarily.
Wow. I wonder if you could cross-reference with weather patterns or festivals, events, like what is causing those week over week shifts is really interesting.
Having been in the restaurant business for years, I think almost every chef would also tell you, they're just like, I don't know what's going on. Why is the pork chop selling tonight? And it happens, and it feels very strange when it's happening. You're like, something's in the air, because like it's summertime and like last Friday was hot, this Friday's hot, next Friday is going to be hot. Like, what are we pointing to that now all of a sudden there's a run on a particular protein, as an example? I've experienced that a lot in restaurants where you're just like scratching your head. We didn't order enough of something and it doesn't follow any trend that we normally see with, stocking our station.
Yeah. While we're talking about things shifting, I wanted to talk to you about Bananas, which is the kind of soft serve wing of Morgenstern's in that place on Rivington. I know that you had it as dairy-free for a while, and then you reintroduced dairy. What kind of prompted the decision to make Bananas in the first place and then to introduce dairy as an element?
I wanted to do a soft serve concept for a long time. Soft serve is really tricky. It's a totally different animal from hard pack ice cream. And we always wanted to do something with non-dairy. Morgenstern's has always had non-dairy on the menu from the very beginning. And when we opened the big store, we had a non-dairy flavor in every single category, plus all of our sorbets were non-dairy. So I was serving more non-dairy product than many places that were all non-dairy, and the number of selections that you could have. And we were formulating every non-dairy flavor just based on what the ingredients were. So people say, oh, what kind of milk are you using? And say, well, we would make the milk for each one depending on what we want the flavor profile of the flavor to be. So I was interested in it. When we did it at Rivington last year, it was very successful, but we found it very challenging. The medium for me with blending the milks, making all the milks from scratch, it was limiting for us with what flavors we could do sticking to non-dairy. So it was really just too limiting for the kind of experience that I think people want to have with soft serve. That would be my short answer, is why we did that. So it just offers a lot more flexibility for what we can do with the concept.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think maybe consumers would think that opening with non-dairy was more of a statement on like increased interest in non-dairy ice cream or like plant-based eating in general. But you're saying for you, it was more about soft serve itself.
It was about, for us, it's about the flavor. New York is its own market, and you have a lot of people who are interested in a lot of different things. My experience with the non-dairy consumer is that they are a small and loud minority. So there's they're making a lot of noise, but they're not actually driving that many transactions. And so maybe 25 or 30% of our customers were exclusively non-dairy, and that's why they were there, and they're excited about it. But if you have the other 2/3 that are I'm here because I want soft serve, we want to broaden the availability of what we can do for them. So that was really where it came from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think soft serve as a kind of style of ice cream has had a shift in interest over the past couple of years? I feel like I've seen more restaurants that are taking soft serve seriously.
Yeah, more. I think there's a bunch of reasons I think that happens. I think sometimes I get calls from a lot of people asking me to sort of consult. I don't do consulting, but if I know someone and I'm going to explain to them what I know, I will. But I think a lot of times people say, we're going to get a soft serve machine and we're going to throw it on. And everyone has a nostalgia for soft serve in America, and especially on the East Coast with the shores and things like there's a lot of points of reference for people to say, oh my God, everyone loves soft serve, and that's what we're going to do. So it could be a crutch for your dessert menu to say, well, we're just going to do that and it'll be super easy. Chef doesn't have to deal with it. We can sell it. It's a high margin item and off to the races. The reality is very different. It's challenging to deal with. Most places are buying a mix, and there's a lot of mix available. The ingredient list in the mixes is all very similar, and in my opinion, not stuff that you want to be eating regularly. It's got a lot of stabilizers and gums and all kinds of stuff, and a lot of modified dairy stuff. So things that your body probably has a hard time processing. I know mine does. So yeah. And I don't have a dairy issue, but when I eat soft serve off of the Mr. Softy truck, which I do that once or twice a year, I see the truck and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. My first bite, I love it. By the time I'm at the end of the cone, I'm regretting doing it. So that's my experience with that. So I think that buying the machine and having the machine as an option for your restaurant or for part of your concept, definitely you're seeing that happen. I regularly hear from people that are calling, asking for help with dealing with the machine or the product or whatever the case may be. So there's interest in that because of the nostalgia thing that we were talking about just now. I mean, there's no two ways around it. The technology of the machine makes for an undeniably delicious thing, product, dessert, whatever you want to call it. So we love it. It's an amazing thing, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. It's more challenging than most people think to make the base from zero than obviously to buy the powder and mix the water into it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to talk to you about collabs and how they work at Morgenstern's as well. This summer, you released a series of collabs with Russ and Daughters, which is a very iconic appetizing and bagel shop here in New York. And just before we started recording, I got to try the sesame bagel ice cream sandwich, which I've been coveting since I saw on Instagram. And I know the collabs are kind of a big part of your business. For this one with Russ and Daughters, how did it come about, and like what makes it a true collaboration between the two places?
We started collaborating with chefs and creatives when we opened the store in 2014. Anna Sheffield is a friend, jewelry designer here in New York, and she had this idea for an ice cream that she really wanted. And I've known Anna forever. She's a very unique creative talent. She has a very specific eye and way that she communicates things. She's got a very successful business, and she wanted to do something with us. And so I had this experience. I wanted to do it. I thought it was exciting and interesting. This was before every brand had put an X next to their name in another brand. So it was a kind of a new way of thinking about opening up your back end of your operation and like working with someone like that. It was a very frustrating experience for me because she wanted it a certain way. And I was like, these are the parameters. And she is a good friend and a very, very nice person, but she continued to press and press for what she wanted. The sum of the experience for me was like, wow, working with someone else will actually get you to a totally different level. You're out of your comfort zone. You're pushed past your perceived or real boundaries to get somewhere else. And she was thrilled with the product. And then more importantly, customers loved it and wanted it. It was like something that people wanted. So
what was the collab you landed on with her finally?
So she wanted an ice cream cone that had black diamond and rose. This was a piece of jewelry that she had made, which was rose gold with black diamonds. And so she wanted something like rosé and also with black diamonds. So what we finally wound up doing was dipping the rim of a sugar cone in agave and then encrusting it with these sesame seeds that we had made kind of bejeweled and shiny using sugar syrup and other stuff. And then the scoop on top was prickly pear ice cream. And so it was a back and forth on the flavors and the ingredients, and also the coloring was really important for her. And we don't use coloring in our stuff. We never have, and I don't think we ever will. So there were a bunch of things that were making it challenging, but that's where it landed. It was really beautiful, and it also was delicious, and it like was very expressive of what she wanted it to be and what she wanted it to look like. So from there, I was approached regularly by chefs and other creatives to do things, and we've made a lot of different flavors with a lot of different people over the years. The Russ and Daughters partnership came about this year. I've known Josh and Nikki from Russ and Daughters for a long time.
They're right in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and we had done some funny dinners with them a long time ago where guests would come to. I used to own a cafe called El Rey on Stan Street, and so
I loved El Rey.
Oh, cool! Yeah, thanks. So people would go there to have their first course, and then they would go to Russ and Daughters to have a course, and then they would come to Morgenstern's and have a course. And so we had worked with them. Josh had called me a few times over the years and said, "I need help making an ice cream sandwich. Do you think you could help me with it?" And, you know, we're busy and things don't happen for whatever reason. But this year he was, I don't know what the urgency was, but he was just more like serious and like, I need to do this. And so he originally asked me to make a babka ice cream sandwich, literally slices of babka with ice cream in the middle. There are a number of reasons why that would be really challenging to make delicious and make it work. And so I just said, if we want to do this, we really need to do it for real. Like we need to come up with a lineup, and we need to have a schedule and a plan and everything. So we deliver the sandwiches to them, to all 3 of their retail locations. That does not include the restaurant, but it's the Houston Street store, their store here in Hudson Yards, and then they've got a store in the Navy Yard. So we deliver to them once a week. We have a set agreed on quantity. As you saw them, they're a lot of work. They're made by hand, and we're tremendously busy with a bunch of other things. And then this is like this thing that takes a lot of labor and attention to detail to make them. So we agreed on what we thought would be like an kind of a pie in the sky level of sales for these things. And I just asked him, what do you think it will be? And he said, if we did this much, it would be really successful. We've been running the partnership now for, I think, like 7 weeks. We deliver on Fridays. Every Saturday morning, they call us and tell us they're out. It's crazy. It's really wild. People are really into it. They are a tremendous partner as well. Their team is not only like on it and intelligent, they're also really kind, and they understand what it means to run a small business. So just like 10 out of 10 as far as a partnership goes. Their brand design is also sick, and I really like brand design. And a big part of the interest for us in doing novelties is getting to design a physical object. With ice cream, it's going to melt, and you're not going to have anything left at the end. And in this case, you do. And their brand guidelines, I think, are outstanding. When they opened the cafe in 2013, I think they opened it. I remember sitting down and seeing the menu and just like being blown away by the menu design. If you haven't been there, you haven't seen their placemat, it's a really stunning design, and it's very hard to do. I've designed a lot of menus, and so I just was excited to work with them. And we have some other things that we're going to do with them soon. I have a Japanese milk truck, and we're going to brand the Japanese milk truck for the Russ and Daughters partnership, and we're going to do some giveaways with that. We did giveaways when we launched the product, which was madness, and everything was gone within 20 minutes. But we'll do some fun stuff like that again. So being able to work with them on the branding and work with their team to bring these things to life has been outstanding. It's really fun.
And they're really like a longstanding New York institution. So I think to be able to help further what they're offering customers when they've been in the game for so long must be rewarding as well.
I'm 10 years old. They are 110 years old.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
Like the great granddaddy of the neighborhood.
Yeah. And just stellar. I mean, I'm a fan and a customer of theirs, and have been since I moved here. And being in the store and giving away the ice cream was like, pins and needles as far as just like, whoa, this is crazy that we're in here with these guys.
Did you clear out the lox counter, or where were you passing it out in there?
So they have freezers in the retail that they brought, which is amazing. They look fantastic. And then we branded the ice cream cart, one of the carts, and then we were in front of the store and giving it away on the street. And like I said, they were gone. That was a crazy experience. It was like 10-10 winds pulled up on us, like that's, and it felt so appropriate for that partnership that like the news truck was there with like the lady with her microphone. It was really funny. You
mentioned Japanese milk truck, and I nodded, but I don't think I know what that is.
Oh yeah, that's not a real thing. I mean, I own this thing.
What is it?
It's what they, in Japan, they call it a K truck, Kei, and they're these like little tiny trucks.
The cute little like half pickup trucks kind of?
So that's, yes, those, so that's like a Honda Acti. Yeah. There's a few different brands that make those. And then you have all these Delicas, which are like these miniature little like little camper vans or whatever. I have something that's very specific. They're very rare in the United States. It's called a Mitsubishi Minica, and it's called like a, I think that the denomination for the one that I have is called I think it's called the pass-through or a walk-through. So it's a little tiny van that has all these doors and windows that open. It's pretty crazy.
It's so cute. I'm looking it up right now.
It's really cool. And I brought it from Japan in the pandemic. I'm a car nut and I have a bunch of Japanese cars, old Japanese cars, and this fit right into that. So when I saw it was available, I was like, oh, I should buy that for the business. It's going to be sick. And then it's been
for the business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's been sitting for about 2 years. Really tough to get parts for, but it looks like it's going to be ready tomorrow, actually, I think. And it's super fun and weird. The Japanese design is like so bizarre on this thing. But
well, it's funny because I feel like the Japanese trucks have been having a big resurgence online, at least. I see tons of videos of people driving them around, like doing all kinds of things with them. So you're going to somehow integrate this for the collab?
It's going to be branded with Russ and Daughters. And then we have a custom freezer going in. And it's hard to explain. When people see a photo of it, they'll understand. There's a little side door that pops open and you can service from outside the van. You don't stand in the van. It's so small. A child could stand in there, but like I definitely couldn't stand in there. And so we'll go around to some locations. National Ice Cream Day is on Sunday. So I'm hoping to be out there with it. I'm just going to drive it around the city. It's wild. Anytime I drive it around, people are just like causing accidents to stop and look at it because it's so funny. It's right-hand drive, and it just has this like crazy look to it. But yeah, we're going to brand it with the Russ and Daughters branding this week, and then we'll stock it as full as we can get with the sandwiches, and I'm just going to drive around and give them away.
I love hearing that. And before we get into our final lightning round, I just want to know, like, do you still like eating ice cream?
Yeah, I do. My relationship with it. I tell people this all the time. Making ice cream has nothing to do with eating ice cream. Those two things are not related. You do taste the ice cream if you're testing and doing that, but making ice cream is a lot of work, and maintaining something frozen and all that stuff is really challenging. My indulgence for ice cream, if I'm going to eat ice cream out on a cone, I'm going to get vanilla on a cake cone. That's what I get. I do love soft serve, and I'm really interested and like curious about ice cream. So if I go somewhere and I see something interesting, I want to check it out and try it. As like just a day-to-day consumer, I'm not eating ice cream every day. People think that that's what I should be doing, and that's not what I do.
Ice cream for breakfast.
Not maybe like once a year.
Yeah.
I mean, once a year, depending on what I was doing the night before, I think.
Do you have any ice cream in your freezer at home right now?
Mm-hmm.
What flavors?
The Morgenstern's flavors right now is the hazelnut Rocky Road, because I've been like playing around with the hazelnut product that we're using for that. So I'm like tasting it as we go. I usually have coffee ice cream in my freezer because I like to put coffee ice cream in coffee, which is like silly, but it's like a thing that I like sometimes. So if it's a weekend and I'm not working and I can make coffee, I really like it with iced coffee. So if I put a little bit of iced coffee in the glass, and then instead of ice, I put a little, not a lot. I'm like maybe putting 1 or 2 ounces in there. Like I like that. And then in the summertime, I always have popsicles in my freezer. That's been something that I like to eat a popsicle when it's hot.
Yeah, I've done like whipped cream into hot coffee before when I'm camping or something, but I've never done the ice cream into cold coffee. So I'm going to have to do that next.
The other thing that I recommend is I really love a scoop of coffee ice cream with skim milk poured on top of it.
Whoa.
Skim milk is almost all water, as most milk is mostly water, but it freezes on the ice cream and it makes it kind of crunchy, and it also dilutes the sweetness a little bit. So you'll get this like icy kind of crust on the ice cream, which is not, usually you don't want something icy in your ice cream. You want it smooth and creamy, but it creates like an interesting texture. And then you can kind of get like a little bit of a slushy at the bottom of your bowl. And I think with coffee ice cream, like slushy is a good thing.
Yeah, slushy is a great thing. Okay, I could hear your ice cream tips all day, but I think instead we'll do a little lightning round to close out. So I'll give you a category and then you just tell me like either or, whatever your answer is. Also, like, would you say, now I'm giving away my first question, would you say hard ice cream is the opposite of soft serve, or is it just soft serve and ice cream?
That's going to take a long time to answer that question. They're not opposites. Okay. No, they're parallel to each other.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So soft serve or ice cream?
It's going to be ice cream.
Okay. Your favorite ice cream on the menu at Morgenstern's right now?
Butterfinger.
The trickiest ice cream flavor you've ever had to get right?
there's been a lot of them.
I know.
Sometimes they're challenging. Anything with high acid is really hard. So like yuzu, there was like particular issues with yuzu over the years. And I love yuzu. It's so good. And that's one of those things that's becoming more popular. So we have 2 yuzu flavors on the menu right now, actually. Yuzu poppy seed and yuzu strawberry.
Cool. Your favorite topping for ice cream?
Whipped cream.
Your favorite store-bought grocery store ice cream?
Haagen-Dazs.
Your favorite restaurant in New York? No ice cream.
Oh, man. That is a hard one. So many places have closed.
Or you could tell me a closed favorite place you wish you could magically reopen.
Oof. Prune.
Yeah.
I wish Prune was open. Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the one for me.
Okay. Your favorite non-ice cream dessert in New York?
We haven't talked about this. I'm really into boba.
Oh, me too.
So that's where I would go with that. And there's a place in Queens called Happy Lemon, and it's a chain, but they have these blended lemon drinks where they blend whole lemon, and it is incredible. And so they do some with melon, they do some with like black tea. They change it, but I love those things. They're so good.
Cool. A restaurant that's not in your neighborhood that you wish could be your neighborhood restaurant.
Prune.
Yeah. And finally, I'm curious if there's a fictional food scene, like in a book or a movie, that you wish you could eat in real life.
I mean, the chocolate factory would be like the duh answer, but that's probably too obvious.
You know, a lot of people don't say that, actually.
Oh, really?
I think it's just...
My second favorite movie is a movie called Tin Men. And they spend a lot of time in the diner all the time. And it takes place in Baltimore. I love Baltimore. It's such an interesting place, such a old school working class city. So there's something very nostalgic about these like salesmen sitting around in the diner all the time. And now I have such nostalgia for diners. When I moved to New York, there were hundreds of them. They were everywhere. And now there's none. So I probably would lean in that direction. But I'm not necessarily thinking about eating scenes out of movies. That's weird.
I mean, I think most people don't spend their days thinking about it, which is why it's a fun podcast picker question.
Yes,
but thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is Taste is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things happening.